Good evening, everyone. Welcome to another beautiful evening with us on Live with Lloyd. I am your host, astronumerologist Lloyd Strayhorn. On the screen, we have a very eminent scholar, a person that's like he knows Egypt and things of that nature, like the back of his hand. He's an author and whatnot. And I'm going to have his co-host Donald Clayton, who is the executive director of the International. Um, uh, Harlem's International Museum, excuse me, right here in Harlem, because I made mention on Wednesday. Did you know there was a Egyptian museum in Harlem? Um, so let me do a couple of things before we do that. Um, let's see. Okay, here we go. Here we go. Everybody, thank you. A couple of things before I bring on my distinguished guest. I was invited on some TV show last week to give the predictions for the Super Bowl. I am not a sports person at all, seriously. If they had talked to me more than 15, 20 minutes more, they'd have knew I didn't know that much. But I mean, I knew the quarterbacks' birthdays and all this other stuff. So anyway, I did say it was be a nail biter from the responses that I got from you. It certainly seemed to have been a nail biter. Okay. But I told him we'll be close. All right. And before I do bring them on, let me let you know that this is Black History Month. It's actually Black History every day, as far as I'm concerned. But the Harlem Arts Alliance is having a special unveiling of Black music. Actually, the original music in America is jazz. If you do the research, you'll find it out. It ain't country western. No, that's a new kid on the block. It ain't rock and roll. That's a new kid on the block too. I'm talking about the original music of America. This country is African American music known as jazz, blues, things like that. And then we unveil to hip hop and things of that nature too. So it's taken on a lot of things, but it's going to be unveiled tomorrow at the Harlem. Excuse me. It's going to be unveiled tomorrow at the Harlem Hospital afternoon. But for those who want to know more information, call 347-735-4280. That's 347-735-4280. All righty. Okay. And excuse me. Thank you. Thank you. Just a little interruption in a second. Okay. So call after 10 a.m. if you want to know more and be there. I think it's on. I think it's on exhibit at the Harlem Hospital main building on Lenox Avenue between 135th and 136th Street. From I think it's going to be there for about either 2 or 3 weeks. But for further information, just call 347-735-4280. So before we begin, let me let you know that the show is sponsored this week by the way, I'm not taking any calls for readings. Calls for my subjects, yes. For readings, no. Today's sponsor is by Jazz Aphrodite, who is sponsoring the show last week, this week, next week, whatever. And I thank her very much for her sponsorship. Please order her book. She's got pre-publication offers for hardcover, softcover editions. Also, when you go to jazzaphrodite.com/shop, also shop for other services, charts, readings, consultations, and things like that. That's very important. I had a good talk with my buddy King Simon, who is also sponsoring the show. King Simon will be coming up with some other type of sponsorships later on. So he just said, give him a minute with that. And so he is one of the best. And also Manifest on Purpose with Miss Kimberly. You should visit her podcast. She deals with the subconscious mind, what motivates people on purpose to do the things they do. And she always takes a page from her personal life that relates to the universal things with stuff like that. Okay. So before we bring them on, let me let you know about the forecast for today. Yes, it is Monday, February the 12th, 2024. The sun is in the sign of Aquarius. The moon is in the sign of Aries. It's not a 9 universal day. It's a 1 universal day. My bad. It's a 3 universal week, but it is a 4 universal day though. So the universal month, the universal week, I stand corrected. It is a 1 universal month for February. I don't know how that got past me. And it is a 3 personal week for the week of the 15th through the 8th through the 14th. But Aquarians, Geminis, Leos, or anybody born on the 1st, the 4th, the 10th, the 13th, the 19th, the 22nd, the 28th, and the 31st. Okay, this is your time. So now that I got that out the way, now I can bring on my distinguished guest. Hold on, let me see something right quick here. Okay. So without further ado, I had this distinguished gentleman on. Let me see something. There we go. To the top right, right next to me is Brother Mfundishi, who is we couldn't get a voice. And my daughter taught me the time I had an emergency like that to use the phone, but there was an echo and we cut it short. But his story was so amazing. And at the bottom of the screen is Donald Clayton, who is the executive director of the Harlem International Museum for Black History and Culture. You got to see this museum, folks. I've got some photographs we're going to be sharing that you're going to want to see it. When I was in his museum, I had a flashback when I was in Cairo, Egypt, in the museum. I mean, it's the most incredible thing you would want to see. But in the meantime, though, we're going to talk to Brother Mfundishi. Mfundishi, how you doing, buddy?
I'm doing excellent. Excellent.
Listen, you have me so intrigued how you met Malcolm at 14 that changed your life. Can you just do that? And how many, everybody knows about Dr. Ben and John Henry Clark. They all went to Egypt, but they don't know you made as many trips to Egypt and many parts of Africa than just about anybody I know. This includes.
Right. So this is going to be my 34th trip this Friday. And then in April will be my 35th trip to Egypt. And I've been to 28 countries on the African continent. So my goal is to do all 50, but I'm hoping by the time I get to 50, Africa is the United States of Africa.
Hold up. Now, you need to repeat those again. You went to 34 so-and-so times. Can you repeat what you just said so people understand?
I've been to Egypt 33 times. This Friday will be my 34th trip to Egypt. And then I have another trip going in April that we're sponsoring, middle of April to May, and that'll be my 35th trip to Egypt. Each time I go, I empty my cup because I'm learning something new. Yes, I'm reading the glyphs off the wall, but I'm always exposed to something new, trying to expand my knowledge. Nobody knows it all. So I'm trying to, each time I'm learning something.
What led you on this journey?
Well, let me just say this. When I graduated from college, I went to Norfolk State University, traditional black college in Norfolk, Virginia. And we were the first to introduce Africana studies.
Interesting.
During that time, in 1960, 68, 67.
Yeah.
We issued in the first Black Studies programs. So the black colleges, we brought it in. I was instrumental there. We took over the campus, demanded Black Studies, made ROTC not mandatory, that type of stuff. So
yeah.
Before that, in 1964, I was getting my book list together, books that I needed to read. So I was in Harlem. I used to come to Harlem, 125th Street, almost every weekend. And so I'm at the Liberation Bookstore, and the bookstore right there on 125th Street, and Malcolm X is on the corner passing out leaflets because he had just reformed the Organization of Afro-American Unity. So, I'm being curious. I went over, took a flyer. Malcolm looked at me and said, "You look like a upcoming promising young man. So you need to come to our meeting." So the very next week, me and my spiritual brother was there. And he captivated my mind. And I looked around the room, and everybody, it must have been about 50 people in the room. Everybody was on the edge of their seat. And I looked and I said, whoa, this is what I want to be able to do. So I knew at 14, this is what I want to be able to do. So I was in the organization all the way till Malcolm was assassinated.
Wow.
But at the same time, I was taking the information that he was giving me, and we formed an organization in New Jersey called Brands. We used to tell the parents, in order for them to sign up, that Brands meant black, real, ambitious, natural, and smooth. Now, everybody in the 60s wanted to be smooth and ambitious, right? But it really meant black revolutionaries for a new society. But I couldn't.
You had to kind of dress it up.
I had to dress it up. So I couldn't tell the parents that, ain't nobody signing up. I'd be the only one in the group. Okay. And that group was very successful all the way I went to college, you know. And
Wow.
we had a free breakfast program. They would go to school in the morning. We would teach history, kawaii, culture, and martial arts.
This
Then
was
in
like
the
a precursor to the Black Panther Party.
Yes, right. This was before the Black Panther. And then in
Yeah.
the afternoon, we cleaned up the community and help the elderly if they wanted to go shopping or things of that nature. That's what and they got a stipend, you know, each week, you know, to do that. So I developed that as a result of being in contact with the Organization of Afro-American Unity in Malcolm. And I was the first youth coordinator of the Organization of Afro-American Unity under
Interesting.
Malcolm.
Now because he made his heist to Africa.
Right. I was there in the organization when and Betty would read the notes that he would send back at each of the meetings. We would all huddle around and she would read, you know, because he was a prolific writer. Every place he went, he wrote on it and sent back to, you know, to Betty. Yes.
Wow. Wow. Wow.
So
Yeah.
now when I went into college, I was already charged up. In fact, even as a freshman, they appointed me Minister of Information. My job was to tell them what books to read to get some consciousness, you know, and stuff like that as a freshman.
And,
Right.
and in fact, you are already an author of several books on Egyptology.
Right. You know, so that's you know that was going on. So when I finished college, I went to Rutgers University, and then I went to the University of Dar es Salaam in Tanzania, because I wanted to have an education in Africa and an education in America. So when I speak to Africans on the continent, I spoke to them as one of them.
Mm-hmm.
I can speak Swahili and a couple of other African languages. So I could speak to them as an indigenous African. But when I'm speaking to Africans in America, I'm you too. I went to school here. I graduated here. So I spoke as one of them. So I didn't look like a traitor on each side, you know?
Yeah.
But I
Yeah.
didn't get into Egypt. When I graduated from college, I was calling myself an Afrakologist. I was into the culture of all of Africa, right? I met Dr. Ben. I was teaching at an independent African school called Nyeri Educational Institute, named after Julius Nyeri of Tanzania.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay?
Yeah.
So for the keynote, at the end of the year, for the keynote speaker, Dr. Ben was the keynote speaker. So since I was the history teacher, I had to read his vita. So I'm like, oh, snap. This is somebody I need to know. He had just came out with the book, The Black Man of the Nile and His Family.
Yeah.
So I
Yeah.
got an autograph copy right there. And then that focused me
That's a
towards,
collector's item.
right. That focused me towards Egypt. Later, I became Dr. Ben's assistant. I traveled almost 9 times to Egypt with Dr. Ben as his assistant. So when I go, I sat at the feet of the best.
No,
You know,
he was behind him and John Hope Franklin and John Henry Clark. Those gentlemen was like that was it.
I used to be at Dr. Clark's house almost twice a week. In fact, he used to always kick me out. He would say, Mfundishi, well, at the time, he just said, Hassan, he says, you ain't got to go home, but you got to get out of here and leave my books. Because I would have 3 or 4 books on the floor trying to read them all at one time.
Yeah, and in fact, I had Dr. Ben on my show, and he had talked on my show at that time on WBLS, WLIB about going to Egypt and inside with the tombs with the hieroglyphics of the astrology signs and stuff like that. Because, you know, there's a whole question about where this comes from. And I said that astrology and numerology is an ancient African science.
Yes.
Okay. And all they got to do is look at the building of the pyramids that was built at the exact center of the earth. You got to have some mathematical knowledge in order to do that, for which to this day, they still haven't unraveled all the mysteries.
True North. They didn't even know what True North was until a couple 100 years ago.
Yeah.
Magnetic North and True North, yes. Ancient Kemet already had that map down. They knew the circumference of the planet, how far the moon was, how far the sun. Come on.
Yeah, especially the Sirius, the people, the Dogon people, they knew about the Sirius star, the Sirius B. In fact, I saw a picture of the brothers in the book. I think it was the Sirius Star Mystery. They looked like brothers on 125th Street, man. You know what I'm saying? They could not figure out. They didn't use no telescope. How did they do this? They say, well, the missionaries came through. We seem like everybody get credit except we get credit for what we do and the ingenious nature of what we do collectively.
And the Dogon comes out of Kemet. The Dogon come out of Kemet, you know. They left when you had the Islamic invasion into Kemet. then that's when they migrated away.
Now I gotta switch up a second so we don't leave Donald out. I mean, because I got more to
Listen,
talk to you. Donald, listen, buddy. What inspired you to set up the museum that blew my mind when I made my appearance there with the invitation of Mfundishi 2 weeks ago? I was blown.
good evening. Thank you for having me. Um, uh, I'm enjoying listening to Mfundishi. He is our resident historian, Egyptologist, and official tour guide, and he promotes the museum all around. The Harlem International Museum, we're actually a 50-year-old institution.
Wow.
We were founded in 1972 by our founder, Mr. Andy Owens, who is still with us to these days. He's 96 years young. He still comes into work every day. We can't slow him down, but he made this mission to build a museum that wasn't just like an African American, yes, an African American museum. He wanted to expand it to even further because he understood that, you know, our history did not begin in 1619 when we arrived on these shores, and that our history goes back to the beginning, to the start. So again, the museum has been around. It's a 501c3 not-for-profit chartered by the Education Department of the state of New York. So we are a licensed museum educational cultural institution. The purpose of the museum is to collect, document, disseminate, teach, celebrate, and exhibit
There we go. Sorry about that.
of the African diaspora. So we document the history of Africans, no matter what part of the world they were in. And what we learned is that with whatever part they were in, whether it was Japan, whether it was in France, whether it was in Europe, we made substantial contributions. There was a movie out just recently on Chevalier, the black quote Frenchman, because he was a Frenchman, but he was born in Martinique. The mother of a I think is Guyane woman. But anyway, during the time of the French Revolution, his white father brought him to France to get a better education, and they registered him into a music school, and he excelled in the art of playing the fiddle. I mean, not the fiddle, the violin. He became a master violinist. He became a master musician in terms of writing music, and one scene in the movie is him challenging a duel between him and Mozart, and he beats him. And Mozart says, "Who the hell is this guy?" You know, they couldn't believe it. He was also an expert fencer. He excelled. He whipped everybody in fencing, and he was so gifted that the Queen of France's queen at that time was Marie Antoinette. She took him under her wing. She became his sponsor and protege. But in the end, she double crossed him, as they all do. And his mother told him that they would. So it kind of broke him. But anyway, he went on to, when the Haitian Revolution began, he went over to Haiti and participated in the Haitian Revolution. And the Haitian Revolution was not only in Haiti; it was also in Jamaica, Martinique,
Spread throughout all the Caribbean.
All the Caribbean. Anyway, so I go on with that, but that's what the museum's mission is, to show all of these. At the beginning of this, before we went on the air, you were talking about how Black people invented everything, and you know, one of the things that was not in the book that I just recently learned was that, of course, we all know of the writing of the Constitution. What's his name? What's that president's name?
Oh, Thomas Jefferson.
Thomas Jefferson. So we know he slept with one of his Sally Hemings, one of his slaves, and they had children. And but he also had children from other of his enslaved women. One of them, a son he had, grew up to learn how to be a great chef. And when Thomas Jefferson went to France as the ambassador from the new United States, he took Sally Hemings and her brother with him to France. So of course he got into France and he learned and excelled in French cuisine, and he became a top chef in France. But here's the real story. We talk about Black people inventing stuff. Here's what he invented as a chef. He invented vanilla flavor. He invented baked macaroni. Yes. Yeah, what they don't teach you in school. Yes. And so when Jefferson had to come back to the United States, he told his son, "Well, you come on back, and I'll make you head chef in the White House." So his son said, "Well, you got to put that in writing, because
He had that much sense, right?"
He said, "I want it in writing." Jefferson would not put it in writing, so he didn't come back with him.
That was his son, wasn't it?
Yeah. But he was so the European, when they had children with the African women, they didn't recognize them as their son in that same way that they would if it was a white child. So yeah, he was his blood relation, but he was still a slave, and that was the law in America, so that all children of African women, well, in other words, the way the law reads is that if your mother's a slave, you're a slave. Doesn't matter if your daddy was the plantation owner. If your mother was a slave, you were a slave.
That kind of mindset has done this nation, even up until this 21st century,
yes,
a lot of disservice.
Yes.
A lot of disservice. But let me switch up. How did you two guys meet?
Okay, so good question. So the museum, again, that's been around. We were at in the 80s, we were in residence at City College under the tutelage of Dr. Jeffries and Professor Smalls. And so they had us there, and we were doing museum exhibitions in the student. They gave us a space in the student lounge, and we were doing exhibitions there. And that's where I got a lot of contact with the idea of the Kemetic understanding and all. I did make a trip to Egypt one time. Anyway, so fast forward, when we came to where the museum is now, excuse me, this is just a temporary setting, because it's an apartment building that we own. We own the building, but it's an apartment building. So we utilize the first floor, the ground floor, for the gallery to exhibit an exhibit. So we decided to make this first exhibit on ancient Kemet. And the idea was that we wanted to start at the beginning. Where did the great civilization, African civilization, begin? We wanted to start with ancient Kemet. So we created this environment. We wanted to create an environment that you would come in and you would not experience like if you went to the Metropolitan Museum where you see a statue and it's behind a plexiglass and it has a name tag and date and all of that. We wanted this with all our exhibits to be experiential. We wanted people to come in and experience the culture, not just see it or read it with facts and dates. We
Well,
wanted
I'll be a witness because I touched everything. It wasn't. I was like, you think I
that's
was
the whole
just a kid out of school, you know? So I was touching everything. That was amazing.
That's the whole point. So anyway, as we were putting the show together, of course, I used to travel across 125th Street every day. And of course, I would meet and see Mfundishi out there. And I saw, his whole Egyptian or ancient Kemetic thing. So I started saying to him, I said, Mfundishi, you need to come by and see what we're doing here at the museum. And he would say, oh, yeah, I'll come. But of course, it was very difficult at first. And I had to take pictures, show him pictures of, some objects that we would, but I don't know if he really believed that that somebody was actually building a museum that actually a Black museum that actually featured and taught the ancient Kemetic information. So finally, I got him here. And when he walked in here, he said, this is it. This is a shrine.
That's what I'm saying.
He said, I want to be a part of this. I will serve on your board. I will conduct your tour things. He even offered to work when we do our young people, the students and such, the education. In other words, we need to be able to translate this complex culture into age appropriate way of understanding it and learning it and teaching it. But again, and the thing of it is, when we put this together, honestly speaking, we had no idea what we were doing. The forces of the universe was guiding us, but we really didn't have any idea of what we were doing. I didn't know how to read the Medunetia, or as you Greeks would say, the glyphs or the hieroglyphs, and the images on the wall that you see in here was strange to me, because I was not exposed to this understanding, this culture. Anyway, so when Mfundishi came and he started explaining everything to us, everything was right where it was supposed to be.
Yeah.
Everything was right where it was supposed to be. The biggest thing he did also in that was that before when he came, we didn't have something on Menchu Hotep. But again, in our library, we have a book this thick on the 12th dynasty, or the first golden age of ancient Kemet. And in that book, there's probably only one page or barely a mention of Menchu Hotep. Mfundishi started teaching us who Menchu Hotep II was, and what he did, and how he transformed Egypt, Kemet, back to its original African culture and state. And so now when you come into the gallery, yes, so he has two books on Menchu Hotep, and he teaches a class on Menchu Hotep. That's how profound this brother was. This brother was awesome.
It still is.
It still is. And now, the reason why, yes, just quickly, the reason why it's called the Golden Age was because he not only reinstated the African culture in ancient Kemet, but his while he was in position of power, he brought in the literature, poetry, books were written. A lot of books were written during his time. Philosophy. So this brother was dynamic. Not to mention, he knew how to kick butt. He knew how to organize the armies of both Kemet and Nubia, and he made sure that Egypt was one civilization. So that's how we met this brother, and we just been growing ever since because of his knowledge.
Well, what I'm going to do, when I went into the museum to do the lecture that Mfundishi invited me to, I was blown. I was literally blown, so much so I got my camera out and I took some images. And what I want to do is display the images I personally took in between you gentlemen. Y'all just go along. The first one I saw was this one.
Yeah, that's Nekabet. And Nekabet represents, you see, it has the white crown on it, represents the south. So that's the southern part of it. Kemet was divided into upper and lower Kemet. And you have Nekabet and Wajet. Wajet is the cobra symbol, and Nekabet is the vulture. And so this the vulture, great mothering ship. So it's the great mother. The vulture can see 2 miles ahead of itself, can travel. It is a tremendous parent to its children. And so that was a symbol of the south of ancient Kemet. So that was what you see there.
Okay, then I took this one.
Right.
I almost had a feeling I was walking into one of the temples.
Yes, like most of the temples have 3 different chambers to the Holy of Holies. So you got the outer chamber where the common people could go. Then you have another chamber where the priests could go. And then you have the 3rd chamber where only the high priest and the Holy of Holies is. So even your churches and stuff like that, Masonic temples and stuff like that with the pew, even the way a courtroom is set up with the judge sitting up, is all imitating ancient Kemet. So that's what Donald and them are showing here. It's a picture of a pillar, but this would be like 3D. It would be going in deep.
That's it's amazing. What about this image?
This is Hatshepsut. This is Nefertari. And this picture actually is in the tomb of Nefertari in the Valley of the Queens. She was the Hemet Nesut-Weret, the wife of Ursa Ma'at Ra, the person they call Ramses II. And her tomb is probably one of the best preserved tombs. So a lot of these pictures here, like this one, comes from her tomb. And the color is just like that, except for the people a little darker.
I'm in a meeting right now. Can I call you back?
Wow.
And then, Donald, you want to tell them they got some modern sculptures in front. Do you want to tell them about the modern sculptures there?
Yes. So what we wanted to do, and again, the museum has an extensive collection. So what we wanted to do here is we went through the collection and we pulled out some West African artifacts. And that's what you see here is a couple of examples of art and artifacts from West Africa, Benin, and the Congo and such. So what we wanted to emphasize was that, because there's this idea somehow that we've been taught that Egypt is in the Middle East and not in Africa, and that the people of ancient Egypt were not African, that they were either Arab or Semitic or Greek or anybody but Black Africans. So what we wanted to show was both West African imagery and East African imagery. East Africa is Kemet. West Africa is the West Coast, and Central and South Africa. So we brought examples of those from our collection and placed them inside the exhibit themselves, so that people. And the other thing and this is what's the beauty of having a scholar like Mfundishi, is that he's able to show you that whether the item comes from West Africa or East Africa, the cultural symbols are the same for all of Africa. and he's able to show those and explain those to you, in that sense. The Metropolitan Museum has an exhibit on right now, the civilization, the birth of civilization, and the whole exhibit is based on Cheikh Anta Diop, the renowned scholar and physicist, Senegalese physicist and Egyptologist and historian, and all of his writings explaining and comparing and showing how, whether you have West African art or East African art or Kemet, you could see the similarities. They have it, they've dug into their African collection also and brought out pieces that are similar to Egyptian pieces. So as Mfundishi says, Egypt, Kemet was the mouthpiece for Africa, but the culture, is all the same throughout Africa. So that's the purpose of the pieces.
Okay, what about this piece? Now, see, I want to sit in this chair. I thought that was Mfundishi's chair right there.
This is a duplicate chair of Tut Ankh Amen's throne chair. So it's in gold leaf paint here. The original chair was really gold leaf on top of wood. So that's Tut Ankh Amen and Ankh-Nes, his wife, who was the daughter of Akhenaten, who issued in the worship of the Aten. So this was his chair. In fact, when his chair was first done, he was called Tut Ankh Aten. And after his father died, Akhenaten, and they went back to the worship of Amen, he became Tut Ankh Amen. But this is his golden throne chair.
Yeah, I thought when I came in, that's where you said it.
Yes.
Yeah, we couldn't keep Mfundishi out of it. It's the royal chair, and he feels right at home there, and he holds court on it. But just quickly on the chair itself, Mfundishi is correct. This is an exact replica of the chair. And one of the reasons why we wanted it in this exhibit was for that reason alone, that if you look at the images of Tutankhamun and Nepseti, his sister and wife, you will see that they ain't white. They ain't white people.
That's red jasper stone.
Yeah,
that was placed there. Now I do crystallology. This crystallology was created in ancient Kemet. That's red jasper stone, blue lapis lazuli stone up on the head. They use turquoise. Carnelian is the sun. And all of these stones, these are the actual stones that were actually being used, that we still use today. They were founded as semi-precious stones from ancient Kemet.
That's amazing. What about this one? This one I love too.
Yeah, this is Benin. This is showing you a Benin warrior. And you can see even the 3 stripes on his cheek. The Yoruba today still do that in their culture.
And also notice not only his regal armor that he's wearing, but his horse is decked out too.
Right.
Now only a brother would do that.
And this is bronze. This is the lost wax situation. This is bronze. This is done 14th, 15th century. Europe couldn't do this at this time.
And the other important fact to know about it, look at this piece. And remember, when the European went into Africa and started looting it of its treasures, they told the world that these people were savages, uncivilized. They weren't capable of high art and culture and such. But when you look at the magnificence of this work, come on, you can't be ignorant and do something to this level.
You know what I want to say, Donald? That sounds so familiar today. That we do not have this and that. It's amazing. The script haven't changed.
No, it has not.
The new face, new names, but the same script about things that will denote our origin. Now, what about this one?
Now, this shows the ancient Cushites, who today they call Nubians, but Nubian is a modern word from the word nub, from gold. But these are the Cushites, people from what we would call Sudan today. And I think some of that, even our Africans call they call them Cushites, but actually the word is Kashites. But they're from what we would call the South, up South. And they're trading in gold, frankincense, and myrrh with the ancient Kemet U. Now, I want to make this statement. The ancient Kemet U from Kemet and the ancient Cushites from Kash, which would be like Ethiopia, Sudan, are the same people. It would be like your relatives live in Georgia and they move to New York. They're still the same people.
Same family. Yeah.
Same family.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know,
yeah.
and in my book, Mentuhotep, I show, for example, that Mentuhotep's wife, one of his wives, second and third wives, is from Kush.
And well, we're going to show those books after we show these exhibits because I want you to pull out all your books.
His son's mother is from Kush. I'm just trying to show you the continuity. They were one people. And when Diop showed the different levels of African people, he showed the Kemet U from Kemet, and then he showed the Kushites, and they were identical. Then he showed the Libyans for Europeans, and he showed the Asiatics to show the difference. But he depicted the ancient Kushites and the ancient Kemet U as the same people.
You know, because at one time they wanted to move Egypt like more to the European section until Dr. Diop shut that down.
Yes.
Okay.
Well, even today, if you're from Europe, if you're from Egypt, your passport says you're white. Even though you
hold up, repeat that again.
If you're from Egypt and in North Africa, you're considered white. That's the claim, that legacy, even on your passport.
In fact, when you come to the United States, they stamp your passport as white.
Yes.
But we know today that the modern day quote Egyptians are from the Arabs or Arabic or Arab, and they do not like this idea of we Africans in the diaspora claiming ancient Kemet as the birthplace of our history and culture and legacy.
And everybody knows that they just got here. All you got to do is just look up the Arab invasion of Egypt. They didn't get there till the 1500s. They built no monuments,
like Johnny come lately.
Monuments, no temples, no nothing. They don't have anything to do with ancient. In fact, the destruction, the bombing, blowing of the hole in the Cape, that was Arabs. The knocking off the nose of the Harut, that's not Napoleon. That was Arabs. Okay. So, we need to put that in its proper.
Yeah, you know what? I remember one time, I think the Metropolitan Museum had an exhibit like years ago, Egyptian, and I noticed most of the statues in the museum, the nose was always disfigured. Right. And I wondered why. Why the nose? Not the mouth or the eyes, but the nose.
Yeah, we had two reasons for that we teach. There's probably could be more, but specifically two. One was that when a statue is completed, the high priest comes forth and he puts his adaz, his wand, up to the mouth, and he says, "May you speak in the next world so that you can tell us what is there." Then he puts it up to the nose. He says, "May you breathe in the next world so you will have life everlasting." So they believe that if they cut the nose off, they destroy the life of the statue. That's one reason. But everybody wasn't that deep. It looked too African, was the second reason, just racism. That looked like a black man. We're going to get rid of the nose. Somehow all the alkaline noses managed to stay on.
You know what? That's true.
Right, but the wide noses that look like ours, they got all
disfigured.
Still see that it was
all disfigured a little bit, right?
Yeah.
Well, that's why Joe Louis said you can run, but you can't hide.
Yeah.
You can try to disguise it, but you can't really.
They just leave it alone. And when we go through the museum and you see some of the priests and some of the Nasut Bittis, the kings, had locks. They don't even talk about that. They just say, "Oh, that was a wig. That was a wig." Well, why would he have a black man's wig on?
True.
No straight hair. Everybody is afros. Even the hairstyles of most of the crowns are imitation of a hairstyle. Like the war crown was the imitation of the African warriors' hairstyle. And they wanted to commemorate that because they were the one that kicked the Hyksos out. And they wanted to memorialize these Africans by making the war crown look like the hairstyle of these Africans from the South.
And Lloyd, the ancient Kemetic people, because they have these objects in some of the museums, actually had an Afro pick.
They got a whole collection of Afro picks in the museum.
Really?
Yes, a whole collection of Afro picks. I got a whole picture of that. About 20 different types of Afro picks from ancient Kemet.
Listen, and are we surprised? Okay.
Yes.
Let me get back to you. Now, this is called, now you got me straight on this, Mfundishi. I called it, when I was in Egypt, they call it a sarcophagus. You call it a what, please?
A karas. A sarcophagus is the Greek word for holding the dead body. The karas means that it is a container that holds the body, preserves the body for eternity. Karas, to be forever resurrected, forever living, to live forever. And so that was the idea. Once they sahud the body, not mummified the body, sahud the body, that's prepare it for eternity. They took each of the organs out so it wouldn't rot, and they placed the organs in mesurah jars, and it would be 4 different jars, and then they would wrap the body, wash. It took 70 days to prepare the body for the karas. Once they place it in this karas, it would last forever. It would never decay.
This would explain why when they open some of those karas, that the people had not wasted away.
No.
But and
the sahu process was so dynamic that they even preserved food that was placed inside. Raisins, dates, and stuff that was in Tut-Ankh almonds, seeds, and the seeds still plant. They could put it in the ground and still germinated and plant. So in other words, it was strong enough to preserve it forever, but yet mild enough not to destroy its natural properties.
Wow.
We don't know how to do that. Formaldehyde kills everything. They don't,
yes.
Yes. Today's mortician is an imitation. See the guy over there, the black guy? That's called Inpu. The Greeks call him Anubis. Inpu was the one who was the high priest who had the sahu process. Not mummification. Mummy is a Greek Arabic word, comes from black sap, black glue. Has nothing to do. So when you're saying that's the mummy, that's the wrong word. It's the sahu. So the sahu would be placed in here. And Inpu, a mortician today, is a poor imitation of the Inpu priest.
Interesting.
And let me just follow up on that a little bit, in that so people understand. Kemet, or the Egyptians, Europeans try to say that they were obsessed with death. No, they were not. They were obsessed with life, and they believed that life was eternal, and that when the physical transitioned into the spiritual. Now, the physical, they understood, was for a very limited time. So if you lived back then to be 50, 60 years old, that was old. However, eternity is forever. So the ancient Kemetic people spent a lot of spirituality in preparing for the forever, for the eternity. And this was why the whole process of preserving the body so that it would remain for forever. And like you said, Lloyd, yes, you dig it up and the body is still there, preserved very well.
It's not just bones, skin and bones.
You see his arms, and you see his arms crossed across. That's called the Osarian position. And Asar represent resurrection, renewal, immortality. And so even today, Muslims, people in the Masonic order, the military, bury their dead, and they put the arms in that position called the Osarian position. Resurrection, rebirth, renewal.
That's interesting.
And for those of us who saw the Black Panther,
yes.
That's how he would greet people. He would greet people with that position.
Now, what about this one? I think this was in the office.
Yes. Well, this is in the office slash the other part of the gallery that works as our office, because we don't have an office. All we have is these two spaces, so we had to have one. So what looks like the a lot of stuff on there is objects from the museum's collection, but in the background there, you see in the corner, in the right side in the corner, is of the lioness goddess of ancient Kemet,
Sekhmet.
and
Sekhmet.
Sekhmet, correct. And but in the center is now see, this is kind of the idea of what we envision when we build on 100. So for your audience, we're out to get Mart 125. That is the building 260 West 125th Street that everyone remembers as the Mart 125 property. So it's the city owned, but Community Board 10 is responsible for what goes in there or what happens to it. We want the city to give it to the museum. Just again, for your audience, Lloyd, New York City, as profound and as important as Black people have contributed to making this the greatest city on the planet, the fact that Harlem is the international Black cultural capital of the world, New York City or state has no Black and African history and culture museum. It has none. It has none. And never had. Schaumburg is a research library. Studio Museum is an art museum, but there is no Black history and culture museum. The city actually has a Jewish museum that it pays all its bills, called the Jewish Heritage Museum, and that's down in Battery Park, in the middle of Battery Park, right next to the ferry there. But no Black and African history museum, and to us that's a crime. And we talked about how Black people not only all over this country have we been discriminated against and such. The mere fact that the city pays for 34 institutions and not one of them are Black history and culture museum. So again, quickly, what we're trying to do is we want to force the city to give that to the museum for it to become its permanent new home. We want to tear down the dilapidated structure that's there now, and we want to build something that, again, when people come on 125th Street, this is right across the street from the Apollo Theater.
Yes, it is. Yes,
we want people to come on 125th Street on their way to Apollo Theater for entertainment. We want them to look across the street and see a Kemetic temple-style building that makes them go, wonder what's going on there, and come on in. And get their history and culture, because Mfundishi explains to us culture is your medicine. And so when we talk about the condition that Black people are in, we're in almost an insane condition. We're so insane. They could sell us chicken. There's 5 different chicken stores on 125th Street. They can sell us $200 and $300, $400 sneakers to our kids who really don't have the money for it, but somehow they get them. And they can do all of this to us because we don't have culture. We don't have our cultural medicine. So, but again, and we ask everyone who maybe want to help, not only come over and see the exhibit that we have now, but go on the website, harleminternationalmuseum.org, and you'll see a link to a petition for this. And if anyone could sign the petition, we would appreciate as many names or signatures on there. And again, for people to just not to be fooled by the petition, because after you sign it, you sign the petition by putting your email in. That's how you sign the petition. And then when after you sign the petition, it's no cost to do it, but the change.org says, well, would you like to donate, say, $10? And the $10 or whatever you want to donate is not for the museum. It's to promote the petition. So what they'll do with the money if you donate is they'll get your petition in front of, say, 500 people more. That kind of thing. It's almost like buying an advertising. So sometimes people think that either that we're asking money from there for the museum, or we're selling something and not. It doesn't cost you anything to sign the petition, and you don't need to give any money after that. Now, if you want to support the museum financially, you could also do that on the website.
Now, what I want to do is I just have a couple more images I want you to talk about briefly. Then I want Mfundishi to display his books, because I'm going to put the full screen on him so people can see, take screenshots and everything. But I was just so amazed at the images I see here.
That's just another karas standing up. So the karas could be laying down or it could be standing up.
Really?
Yes.
Okay. Now
that shows the Sahu process, shows input over preparing the body for eternity.
Really? And
those are just some statues and artifacts from ancient Kemet. That's all.
Okay, and this
that's input over the karas.
Yeah, that's the one I had to touch. I
Right.
really had to touch it. But
Right.
that's why what Donald was saying, that actually you got a human experience. It's
Right.
not behind glass cages and stuff. You can actually touch these
in
things.
that room. The highlight there is we show people the whole Sahu process, that 70 days that it has to go through. And then on the wall, it shows the resurrection scene where you go before the judges. You go before the scales of Ma'at. And Jhuty is there to record your life. And then his son, Haru, takes you to his father, Asar, who art in heaven. How be thy name, thy kingdom come. And this is how you go through judgment. And that's on this wall.
And the last two images is my buddy, Donald Clayton, right next to it. And of course, you, Mfundishi. This is the only thing I can say is this is something. So this is the Harlem International Museum of Black History and Culture. Go there. It is HarlemInternationalMuseum.org. Would that be correct, Donald Clayton?
That is correct. One
it
word.
is HarlemInternationalMuseum.org. And there is a number and this is the address, everybody. It's the Harlem International Museum at 504 West 126th Street, button bell 1A. That lets you in. It's in New York City, and that is the number 64. Did I have that correct, sir, or was it a 2?
No, 64. That's the correct number. 646-408-2000. Let me just say this right quick, Lloyd. The museum is always free. We do not charge to come into the museum. It's always
and you
free.
took my question, brother.
It's free, but we do ask if what you see here moves you and you feel you would like to make a donation. Any donations will be appreciated. We also require you to sign the guest book with your email so that we can document that you were here
Now,
for history's sake.
Before we wrap this up, Mfundishi, please, you got to show your books. He's already written books, but
right.
Yes.
So I started out as a poet after I got out of college. While I was in college, Amamu Amiri Baraka and Leroy Jones, Leroy Jones became Amamu Amiri Baraka. I was there for his naming ceremony, and Don L. Lee, who became Haki Mahubuti, great poets. In fact, Amiri Baraka became the poet laureate of New Jersey. Okay. And so they kind of inspired me. So my first books was poetry. poetry and playwrights. That was the first. In the 1980s, late 80s, they came out with the book Kupagani and Gumi, Root Symbols of Civilization and Ancient Kemet. And so this was my first major book. I had 3 books of poetry before this, but my first book dealing with history and culture was this book. So I wanted to expose people to that. Then the 90s came in 2000, and I came in with this book, Spiritual Warriors Are Healers. And for a lot of people, this is like a cultural Bible of ancient Kemet.
Yeah.
So this is used in several universities. At one time, I had over 20-something universities in Africana Studies using my book, Spiritual Warriors Are Healers. That came out at the close of 2000. My latest 2 books was, you heard Brother Donald talk about this, Menchuhotep and the Spirit of the Magi. So I wrote this around 2016, and then the follow-up was book 2. It was too much information just to get in one book, so I broke it up into a volume 1 and a volume 2. Right now, we have a study group on volume 1 that's on Sunday nights. And people.
And I want to see a clearer picture of volume 2 so people can look at the cover.
Volume 2. Volume 2 says Shimsu Haru, Menchuhotep, the followers of Haru, as opposed to just, so that's what the second.
Now, where can they get your books, Mfundishi?
They can get it on, they can go right on Amazon. But now I'm teaching symptomatic thinking. And so instead of symbolic thought, so that's even the way I teach ancient Kemet. I want you to be able to experience it. I want you to acknowledge it. It's not just a ritual. It's not just some mythology. It's something we can prove that's factual. And so I always recommend these 2 books, An African Answer.
Hold on, let me get the banner off. Go ahead.
An African Answer. Okay, The Kemet Key to Global Production, and this is by Edgar Ridley. And then the second book is called The Golden Apple. So if people want to really understand symptomatic thinking, because we say that African people will not be able to straighten themselves up. If you just learn your history, you're going to be confused with your history. You can't do nothing with it. You got to know, you got to change your mindset. See, the problem, you don't deal with the problem, you deal with your consciousness. And your consciousness will straighten the problem up. When you see things through your consciousness. So the idea is for you to start thinking symptomatically instead of symbolically. Religion, all our schools today is based upon symbolic thought. And that's destroying the planet. Symptomatic thought is the only thing, that's how the brain works. Edgar breaks it down that the brain only operates 2 ways. You either symptomatically or symbolically. But symptomatic is innate to the brain. That's the natural way it was. You are taught symbolic. In fact, symbolic was created probably to try to explain the symptomatic, but what happened, it kind of went astray. And so now people can make stuff up and they don't have to prove it. See, with symbolic thought, I don't have to prove it. It's a belief system. You just believe it.
That makes a lot of sense.
Systematically, I can prove it. So, I just want to make sure An African Answer and The Golden Apple. Make sure you get these books so that you can click, because if we don't.
Are they available on Amazon too?
They're available also on Amazon.com.
Okay, all right.
And if they ever come by my booth on 125th Street, it can also purchase it there.
All right, good. Well, gentlemen, I've kept y'all a little bit over time, but this was fascinating. And as you see, my guest is Mfundishi Jhuty, also Donald Clayton, the Executive Director of the Harlem International Museum of Black History and Culture. Gentlemen, I gotta say this. This has been amazing. Let me say this one more time. This is the website to go to, please. Just go to harleminternationalmuseum.org, harleminternationalmuseum.org, sign the petition, explore it, but then do yourselves one favor, as I've done. And let me tell you, had Mfundishi had not invited me to speak a couple of weeks ago, I wouldn't even have known about this golden treasure right in the midst of Harlem. And this is the address of where you go to visit. Harlem International Museum at 504 West 125th Street. Press bell 1-8 to let you in. New York City 10027. The number is 646-408 2000. That's 646-408-2000 each Monday through Saturday from 10 a.m. to 8 p.m. All righty. Did I get my point across, gentlemen?
Yes, sir.
Yes, you did. Thank you very much, Lloyd.
Good enough. Good enough. Gentlemen, I thank you very, very much. This has been a blessing. And
You are appreciated.
I'm gonna have y'all back at some point. We don't
Please
have to
do.
wait till Black History Month. Every day is Black History as far as we're concerned about one thing or another. And Mfundishi, you have a safe trip to Egypt. Next time you gotta let me know. Maybe I could tag along with you, buddy. It's been a minute since I've been there. Okay.
Okay, all right.
All right. And I met Donald at the museum because he is the proprietor of it. And that's my man. That's all I can say. Donald's my man.
Thank you, Lloyd. Thank you.
You're more than welcome, man. And Mfundishi, you're the best. And please order his books. Can you show the books one more time, please, sir?
Really, right. So this one is hard to get. Kupagani and Gumi. That's our first. That one is kind of like out of print. You can get it, but instead of costing $20, people are paying $30 and $40, $50. It's a hard book to get. This is my first major book. Then this one you can get the new edition. That's Spiritual Warriors Are Healers. So if you want to learn about ancient Kemet from beginning to end, want to know what the Netzeru, the principles are, if you want to know the timeline, if you want to know all of that, this is the book you want. Spiritual Warriors Are Healers. Now, Dr. Clark broke the history up in the ancient Kemet into 4 golden ages. The first golden age, the second golden age, the third, and the fourth. And so the first golden age is where you have Narmer uniting upper and lower Kemet and 1 through 6. Then you had an intermediate period. Menchu Hotep, my next book, is the one that started the second golden age. So when everybody is saying amen at the end of their prayers, that was due to Menchu Hotep.
Interesting.
Okay? So he's the one that introduced. So even people who are Jewish and Christians and other say amen. They don't know that they're going Amin Ra from ancient Kemet. And so he issued in writing system, the educational system that we kind of are mimicking, that we have one. Liberal arts was created here by Menchu Hotep. All of that. And so I wrote the book here, and then I had to follow up with book 2 that takes you all the way into West, the Sahara, to let you know that was a thriving civilization. The first mummification and stuff we see like that was taking place there. The oldest Sahud mummy body found perfectly reserved is a 10-year-old African child in the Sahara in present-day Libya.
Seriously?
And that was 10,000 BCE. That's like 3,000 or 4,000 years before Kemet. So those people from West Africa migrated as the Sahara Desert dried up. They migrated towards the Happy Valley where the water was. And so Kemet was populated by Africans from West Africa, and then the Africans from South Africa came in. Not from the Europeans from the north or Asiatics from the north. The Nile flows down north. So the energy came traveling down. It's just like the cataracts in Egypt. They got it all backwards. When you come into Egypt from Cairo, and Aswan is the last cataract because the Nile is flowing this way. And the Europeans tell you that's the first cataract. And all the books in the world say that's the first. Second, they got it listed backwards. And we need to be able to straighten that up.
Well, you see, Mfundishi, that's exactly, my brother, why you on this show.
Right. And the last 2 books again, An African Answer by Edgar Ridley and The Golden Apple by Edgar Ridley, explaining symptomatic thinking. And if you don't remember anything else, just think of this. If you don't know your history and your culture, and it's not coming from your paradigm, then you are lost. Everybody is operating through culture. If you're not operating through your culture, you're operating through somebody else's culture who might not have your best interests in heart. And if they're operating symbolic, then you would be 3/5 of a man. We talked about that.
Yes, exactly right.
So you need to understand your history and your culture from a symptomatic thought period. So when you change your thoughts, you change your projection of the world. You change how you do business. You change how you do commerce. You change how you do construction. So it's important to understand symptomatic thinking, so that you begin to understand nature the way our ancestors understood nature.
Now I see why you make so many trips to Egypt, my brother. Yeah, that explains a lot of it. Mfundishi, thank you. Donald Clayton, thank you very much. And let me say this for people, please go to the website, the HarlemInternationalMuseum.org, HarlemInternationalMuseum.org. See for yourself what it is. But more than that, get on the internet, go in person, and you can actually touch the items that I took pictures of. I was so impressed. And normally when I go somewhere, I don't take no pictures of nothing. Okay. But I mean, I was just so impressed with everything. And then I was allowed to touch them. You know, those chairs, the karas. Did I get that right, brother?
Right, the karas. Yes.
Yeah, karas. See, okay, good. But those are the things there. So please, there, go and support this museum.
And the last thing I want to say is that I'm leaving to go to Egypt this Friday with Hoppy Films. So Hoppy is sponsoring that. But I also sponsor a trip with brother Kareem, the Red, Black, and Green. We sponsor a trip in April. So people, if you want to go, it's too late to go on this trip. But if you want to go on my next trip, it's like April 20th to May 5th. And they can go on my website, mfundishijhutyms.net. And,
in fact, that should be on your banner, if I'm not mistaken.
Right. If they go to mfundishijhutyms.net, they'll go on my website and they can get that. And they can also
take a screenshot or take a picture with your phone and get that information. Also with Donald Clayton, Executive Director of the Harlem International Museum for Black History and Culture.
Right. So that's our next big trip.
Gentlemen, this was a great way. Notice we didn't start back in 1619. Okay. Right. Notice we didn't start there. Okay, because that ain't where we started. All right. So let us be clear. Our history go back eons. Okay. So I want to thank you, gentlemen, very, very much. Y'all have a blessed day, gentlemen. Y'all take good care.
You are.
Thank you. Be well. Hotep. All righty. So everybody, I gotta tell you, this was very nice. I hope you all got the gist of learning and stuff like that. So please make sure that you do your best to support Mfundishi, get his books, Donald Clayton, and the Harlem International Museum. They're at 504 West 125th Street. That's 504 West 120. Let me tell you, take your kids too. Take yourself, take the elders too, and let them touch those things. Give them a sense. Like when I was in Cairo, I was able to kind of like touch some of the things, you know, that wasn't behind glass partitions and stuff like that, where you could almost get a connection. And I got to be honest, when I went to the museum, even the bathroom was decorated in a kind of an Egyptian flair too. I said, okay, this is interesting. So they're into it. Please go to that museum. But in the meantime, though, I want to let you know, I want to thank all my sponsors who has brought today's show. Jazz Aphrodite, please get your order. She's only making a limited edition of soft cover and hardcover edition. So it is, go to jazzaphrodite.com/shop. So not only just you go to shop to order the pre-orders of the book, but you also go to get your charts done, your lessons, get readings for the year and whatnot. She's one of the best. I kid you not. And I can vouch for her personally. And of course, my buddy King Simon, that's my man. We go back to radio days here in New York City. And whoever knew we would be as tight as we were, who would have ever imagined that working in radio, we would be doing something collectively like this. And he would be raising my consciousness. That is reason why I'm on this particular platform doing my shows. And also, last but not least, Manifest on Purpose. So whatever goals you got, this is the podcast to listen to. Manifest on Purpose by Miss Kimberly. And you can go to YouTube. That's KIMBALEY. It's spelled totally different. It's not the typical Kimberly the way you spell it. It's KIMBALEY. Manifest on Purpose. Everybody. Oh, and by the way, hold up. Let me do this. Coming up. Nope. That's not what I want to do. Okay, this is what I want to do. So coming up on Wednesday, I have it's going to be Valentine's Day. but I'm going to be talking not so much about for lovers and things like that. I'm going to be talking about for Miss Sierra Ward, a young lady that I did a reading with about a month or two ago, and I was so impressed because she wrote this book called Cliche Your Way Through Life, a practical guide to navigating life's complexities and life has. And one of the things is it's about the power of acceptance. This is the cover. I'm going to have her on live this Wednesday. Please, and this is give you a picture of what she looks like. This is a beautiful, beautiful sister, but we'll have more about what she's about. And so, everybody, I do want all of you to have a blessed day. And for those of you who made the comment about the Super Bowl, thank you. I was not prepared. They called me at the last minute, and I stayed up doing some little background, some research and whatnot. And as far as I was concerned, I did the best I could. But if you was asking, was I going to put some money on it? I'm not normally a betting man because it was so close. It was so close. And from what people told me, it was really a nail biter, which is why I use that term. Anyway, all of you have a blessed day. Y'all take good care of yourselves. And I want to thank my guests for being on. And I hope that you got, oh, by the way, please sign up for the free monthly newsletter. We're about midway into the month of February. Before you know it, March will be here in a New York minute. So please sign up for that. And everybody, I want to thank you very, very much. In the meantime, you'll have a blessed day. And I'll see you on Wednesday with my guest, Sierra Ward. Bye.